Check, 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 check. Alright, this should be fairly interesting. I started off just trying to test stream elements, and I think I've given up on that. It looks like it's going to take quite a bit to get that set up and working properly. So, with that said, I'll just go ahead and get to work. What I've got here is a session that I recorded yesterday for a band called Kinda Mad. They've come to me to do some drum tracking, and well, I guess we'll continue tracking the rest of the song as well. But what I've got in a project that's open is the drums that we tracked yesterday and the backing tracks that were provided for the tracking session. We'll be re-recording the guitars and bass at a later date, but I guess just like with my last stream, I don't really have much of anything planned other than just I wanted to start working on this track and give people a chance to watch the workflow and ask any questions if they'd like. I've got 4 different takes on the drums, and what I'd like to start by doing is checking out my snare top and bottom on each of the takes and making sure that we're lined up. So I'll just take a look here at this first verse, and I've got my first transient. Looks like it's pretty well lined up there. I'll move on to the second take, or this looks like the third take, but that's a bit off. I'll go ahead and get that lined up. And if you notice here, these appear to be out of phase, or the polarity is inverted. Excuse me, but I have corrected that already by inverting the polarity in Reaper, so we don't have to worry about that visually. This take is off. I'll go ahead and get that lined up. We're pretty close, and we'll check the first take, get that lined up. I like to try to get a primary transient lined up before getting started in any heavy editing, and it looks like I accidentally made a split, so I'm going to start over. Make sure that I've got my mouse modifiers configured properly, and it looks like we're correct now, so I'll try that same process again. And we'll just check this first snare transient in the verse, and I'll slip edit that to make sure that that primary transient is lined up. And we'll go ahead and do the same across the rest of the takes. The performer was pretty good on his timing. We got a very consistent performance across all 4 of the takes. And now that I've got my primary transient there lined up, the next thing that I want to do is take a look at my overheads. Now you can see here my overheads are lined up pretty well with each other, but they're not lined up with the snare, so I'd like to temporarily ungroup my drums and move just the overheads. And just doing the same thing and getting that primary snare transient lined up. My reasoning for doing that is I want to make sure that all these things are pretty closely aligned before I start cutting and doing any slip editing. That way everything downstream is already in line. And all I'm doing here, I'm not zooming into the sample level, I'm essentially just making sure that the beginning of that transient is pretty much on the line. I mean, if it's just a little bit off, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. I think I've lost track of which direction I was going in my takes. I'm probably overlapping myself now. Okay, looks like I did not get these yet. Alright, so we are pretty well lined up there. Now, we had previously looked over comping on this and decided that pretty much the second take was what we wanted to roll with. I think there was one spot where we may want to switch to a different take, but I suppose for the time being we can take a quick listen to this. You'll be the first to hear it, and we can go through and start doing some editing. Oh, one thing I want to note before I finish playing that out is this is not mixed. It's just the raw tracks as tracked yesterday, and I've got a little bit of bus compression on there to help glue things together and give it a bit of a volume boost. All right, and as you can hear, the timing was pretty good on that. Now, if I were to go and compare it to the actual grid, we'll find some discrepancies in there. And I do want to go and tighten this up so that the guitarist can go back through and accurately retrack his guitar tracks and know, how can I word this, and know what he needs to be hitting as opposed to guesstimating what he should be hitting. All right. I'll go ahead and trim this beginning here, and we'll get started with my fast edit mode. If you're not familiar with the fast edit mode, it's a collection of actions that changes mouse modifiers to make editing a lot faster for me. I go over that in full detail in the drum editing and Reaper course on Pro Mix Academy if you'd like to check that out. And what I'd like to start by doing is grabbing my snare track and my kick track, since that's the basis for the beat, and just focus on those. I've got my snapping disabled and my fast edit mode armed, and we'll go through and start taking a look at some of these hits. Now in this case, we may end up making some edits that sound kind of strange with the guitar, since the guitar may not necessarily be in time. But once again, this is all for prepping for guitar tracking in the near future. And if there's no questions or comments, I most likely will be fairly silent through this as I just work through this. The amount that these are off is pretty small. So just making some gentle nudges to tighten this up a bit. Okay, we're almost through. Oh, let's see. Julian, that is an excellent question. I actually like it the way that it is, but the concern is when going back and retracking for other things, making sure that it's pretty well locked. I may end up just going back and keeping the original performance anyway. Quite honestly, this was just kind of something to do since I haven't streamed in a while, and I've got some people that are interested in the drum editing techniques, so just figured I'd do one. Now, if they had played this completely together and there was some fluctuation, like if it was all live off the floor with the guitars and everything, I would just leave it as is because there's the natural ebb and flow of the band. But when you're recording one at a time, if the drum performance is not lined up, it can be pretty difficult for the next performer to be able to perform their part with any degree of accuracy because they're having to essentially learn the song as it was played, so to speak, and predict whether the drummer's going to speed up or slow down. So at least this way they can have a click in their ear for reference and know that they're going to be in time with the drummer. Let's go back and take a listen and see if we can hear any audible glitches or clicks in here. I'd like to play it with the backing music first just to make sure we've got a pretty good feel, and then I'd like to go back and hear it in solo so I can focus and make sure that there's no glitches in the edits that I've made. It sounded pretty good to me. Let me go back and listen to it once again in solo. Yep, sounding good. Like I said, these the movements that we've made are very minute, but it's just enough to tighten it up and make sure that it's pretty true to the grid, so the next performer will have a fighting chance. Now, if this performance were all over the place and nowhere near on, I would want to just get a better performance out of the drummer. But we got 4 solid takes. I mean, we literally ended up just choosing one complete take instead of doing a comp because it was just good. And that's an interesting one there. I'll have to listen to that and see if that's going to introduce a glitch. I think it did. Let's listen to that. Yep, right there we got a glitch. See if we can mask that out. Yeah, Jagger, it reminds me a lot of 68 and I can't say that word, Arctic Monkeys, like if those two bands had a baby or something. I'm just going to make myself a note there to go back later and check that snare. I may have to do some additional work on that. Of course, what I could do is undo the cut and just not worry about it and see how that piece just sounds as is. That kick is a little bit early, but the primary is on, so I may just leave that for now and see how it feels. I'd much rather just keep the original performance than to create a glitch trying to slip at it. This band is a 2-piece, so the Colton actually did track guitars and bass at home for the backing tracks, but when they're playing, it's just him playing guitar, and he's got an octaver in his pedal rig. Those hits are looking good. Let's see. Very cool. Now, it takes me a second to get the chat since I've got it over on my other screen and I'm having to look through this boom arm, so forgive the awkwardness. Let's see. Using overhead room mics. No, one of the first things that I did, Jagger or Jaeger, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, was to make sure that my overheads were lined up with each other as well as with the snare transients. As far as the room mics go, I don't worry about lining them up perfectly because my room mics are clear across the room. And from the perspective of physical impossibility, it is not possible for those to have the snares hit at the exact same time. Long story short, everything is pretty well in phase. We did some prep work at the beginning of the session to make sure that that was done. They were done pretty close, just physically by mic placement. Excuse me. And as I said, I shifted the overheads just a little bit to get them lined up. And everything is moving. The movements that I'm making here when I'm cutting, all 12 of my drum tracks are being moved at the same time. So I lined them up first to make sure that everything was in phase. And now when I'm cutting and slip editing, I'm moving things that are already in phase, but I'm moving them all together in the exact same amount. And I'm just focusing on the kick and the snare since that's my primary beats. But as I scroll down or up and down, you can see all these collapsed tracks. They've all got the same cuts, and they've got the same slip editing going on at the same time. I hope I worded that correctly. Mick Jagger. With people that chat from all over the world, I never know if the J is a J or a Y or something else. So I find it best to ask. Now that looks like that's going to cause a problem. Let's see if I can smooth that out. That should get it right there. What I spotted there was a bit of an anomaly in the waveform. Ireland. That's a long way from here. Greetings from Jackson, Tennessee. The armpit of civilization. And the home of Carl Perkins, if that matters to any of you. I really haven't even been paying attention to the screen. Am I close to... Okay, yeah, we're almost done with this verse. It's so easy, like, with this workflow to just get caught up in doing it almost mindlessly. Which is why it's hard to narrate when doing this, because when you, like I said, when you really get focused on it, you're not even thinking about it. You're just kind of on autopilot. In a lot of cases, I go back and listen to my work as I go. But I figured I'd try to do this the way that John from Reaper Blog does, and less listening and just... I know we always say to trust your ears instead of your eyes in audio, but in this, I think I want to attempt to trust my eyes and trust that I know what I'm doing. I hope I know what I'm doing. This should get pretty interesting once he gets to that choppy part right before the chorus. He's such a good drummer, though, that this really does not need much at all. Like, that cut was totally unnecessary there. And I like to cut, in many cases, well before the hit that I'm targeting, just depending on what happens before and after it. And I tend to move in larger sections, if possible, instead of cutting every single hit like some would do. I realize that may be necessary in some styles, but I tend to not fool with those styles. Like, this is not death metal. This is kind of a indie groove kind of thing. I'm going to assume that that's supposed to be on the 4. Yeah, everything else seems to line up after that, so that's looking about right. Almost to the chorus. And we'll go back and listen. Okay, I think that's that choppy part. Let's take a look and see what's happening here. I think I'll just leave that alone and make sure that these kicks are dead on. And of course his last hit right before the chorus. And do one more slip edit here to make sure that the downbeat of the first measure of the chorus is in line. And we'll go back and listen to this verse in context now. I think I may have heard one artifact in there that I want to go back and double check. Right about there. It's weird. It seems like I'm getting a double... I use this term triggered loosely, but like a double triggered snare hit right there. But there's like no data in there, or not much. It's... Maybe he just accidentally flammed or something there. What just happened there? Okay, we've got a crash that is off. I'll have to find that one. That could be fun. It is ride side crash. I think I'll need to make myself a note for that. I'll probably have to go back and just float in a different crash, or maybe pull a different take in just for that one little section. Let's experiment and see what happens here. Nope. So what I'm doing now is just experimenting with a different take just for this section. Trying to figure out where that hit should be. it sounded like he did a ride there instead of a crash. Let's see what we did on the first one. Nah, I don't like that either. So that was how he naturally played it, so that was not a glitch, not an artifact created by editing. That may just have to stay. Alright, we'll go with that for the time being. And let's hit our chorus. Get my snare top and kick focused again. I accidentally grabbed the kicks folder instead of the kick mic. And get my fast edit mode re-enabled. You know, I'm not too sure how well this will translate over YouTube, but let me see. We did some video work after doing the recording yesterday, so if you'd like to see Keith in action, here's a quick shot. And that's probably not playing for you. Let me get OBS back up here and check to see if my desktop audio is going. Yep, looks like it is. Let's try that again. So that's Keith. And I am now realizing that I may have accidentally had desktop audio enabled in OBS this whole time, so hopefully this has not been playing in double. Yep, looks like it probably was, so let me kill that desktop audio and see if I can figure out how to get back to the chat session. Would it be possible to send you a mix and ask you to evaluate it and offer points to improv? Yeah, Julian, I'd be glad to. I don't claim to be the most classified, what's the word I'm looking for? Most qualified, but I would definitely be glad to. We've got a Reaper users group on Discord. I will put a link in the chat session there, and we've got a section there. I feel like I can't talk today. We've got a section there for mix critique. And feel free to post it there and also tag me if you'd like. The link is in the description there. Or in the chat. You can tell I'm used to doing the pre-recorded videos and talking about links in the description and such. Yeah, Keith is a fantastic drummer. He was my drum teacher, actually, and I hope to eventually get to the same level as him. He's phenomenal. Of course, it's hard for me to get better if I don't practice much. I remember that snare hit there. That one was one that we all picked out when going through the comping process. It's just awesome to be able to go through a comping process and just decide to take one whole take instead of even worrying about the other three. As far as the video that we did, we recorded the video after we were done tracking the actual audio, and I used my camera, and the guitarist for the band had his camera as well, so we just recorded Keith playing through the song, I think 5 more times, so we got 10 different camera angles to choose from. And once I get all this done, I'll work up a drum playthrough video from those 10 different angles, similar to what we saw there, but with everything color graded to where the shots match, and add a little bit of effects and flair and just try to make it look nice. But just like with the tracks here, I mean, the raw video is looking pretty good, and these raw tracks sound great. I mean, it could stand a little bit of EQ and compression and stuff, but really pleased with the performance. And we are at the interlude, so we can go back and take a listen to this section. That sounds pretty good. I'm not totally happy with the kick sound on this, but the kick drum did not have a port in the resonant head, and we used I think Colton called it a fat mic. He brought an extra mic over to use that we placed above the kick, and it kind of picked up a bit of the clickiness from the beater, but it also picked up a lot of the snare. And oddly enough, that was my first time working with a kick that didn't have a port. Excuse me. Well, I add in samples. That is a no for me. Now, Colton may end up overriding me on that, but I do my best to not use samples. I have yet to do a single project where I used them, to tell you the truth. Now, if we have to, sure, but that, for me, and it's just a personal preference thing, this is not a hard and fast rule for anybody, and I don't want this to sound like it's gospel, but that is a last resort for me. I just try my best to get things right at the source and fix little problems with EQ and compression where we can. I mean, the kit sounded great in the room, and just try to capture what we hear in the room, you know? I want to take a quick look at those toms. Oh, that was just on one. Okay. Yeah, I thought the tom sounded just a little bit off. You know, that's the one problem when you start slip editing stuff, is it changes the relationship of everything else. So things that kind of sounded fine before, you may have to go back and readjust. You are absolutely right there, Jagger. It's like you can... I'll put it like this. There's been stuff that I put out before, and I almost take offense to it when someone asks me, what samples did you use on this? And I'm like, I didn't. It's just my kit. It's good tuning and good heads and a lot of years of practice, which there's always room for improvement. I'm by no means perfect at this, but my theory on that is that the people that are selling samples, all they do is just record them right. So why don't I just learn to record them right? Right, moving on to this interlude, which is probably pretty good. Let's see. I'm not going to be too nitpicky on this. I mean, my kick hits are on. The toms are a little bit off, but it sounds fine. It's kind of, I guess, a bit of a flammy effect, but I do want to make sure that these snare hits right here are pretty good. Shouldn't take much. And then get that. Oh, I've totally lost my place. Let's see, the kick is right there. Okay, so in this case, we're not doing the kick, but I need to make sure that that first tom hit is on the downbeat of 1. Get it right from the source. That is, I have to really choose my words carefully when talking about that stuff because you can offend people pretty quickly when you start talking about these things. I take a very old school approach, which is weird because I don't have any old school experience in audio. I mean, I've never worked with tape or analog equipment. I've always done stuff on the computer and in the box. So this is all that I know. But just a few years ago, I got somewhat obsessed with learning how to mic a kit and just do it right. I don't understand, like, when you deal with larger studios, when you have people that have the best performers, the best gear, uh, the best engineers, the best of everything, but still will sample replace. Like, I could have Anoop Sastry or um, Matt Halpern sit in and drum on a session, and they would probably play a perfect performance. And I'm just like, why would you sample replace that? Why even waste the time miking all this stuff? I feel like in a lot of cases we're just using the drummer to program MIDI for us. Now, with all that said, I don't totally knock samples because that gives a lot of people who don't have a place to record live drums or whatever instrument you may want to insert there instead of drums, it gives people a chance to create stuff that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. Even for myself, like if I wanted to have an orchestra or say like a violin or some horns or something, I mean, I can play trombone, but I don't have one anymore and have no intention of buying one. And I don't really have a good lead on an orchestra to record, so it would make sense in that case to use some samples because I don't have access to an orchestra. But again, if you have the performer, you have the room, and you have the gear, why not just try? In my opinion, that should never be the first thing I go for, is to immediately sample replace a performance. It just makes no sense. All right, that's sounding pretty good. We are about halfway through this song. It's a pretty short song. Okay, so right there we need to slide this back to the upbeat. We got a decent amount of push-pull here at the beginning, so this may get a little bit tricky. Actually, it sounds pretty good. Yep, we'll roll with that. Oh, and you may notice that I'm moving my mouse up and down. I can actually cut on any of these with that action, but it's more a convenience for me because it helps me to focus on what I was looking at that made me decide to make a cut in the first place. At the risk of sounding like a salesperson, again, if you're really interested in drum editing, I do have a drum editing and Reaper course on ProMix Academy. I believe it's currently on sale for like $37, and it's about 5.5 hours worth of training on how to do what I'm doing right now. And the course comes with all the resources. Like there's a project that you could, well, there's two projects actually. It's myself and a friend of mine playing drums on the same song. Both of us, it was our first time hearing and playing the song. Well, the first pass was anyway. I wanted to make sure that we both were essentially just translating the song on the fly and having an honest, not prepared session, so to speak, so that there was sure to be some kind of errors or mistakes in there that could demand some editing. But what's kind of cool about it is we both had a different take on the song, you know, different skill levels, different amounts of experience, different musical preferences. So even though it's the same song, you get two completely different performances on the song with multiple takes, and you'll learn to create a composition from the different takes and to line up your performance to match the groove just a bit better. Let's see what's happening here. Dang, that sounds good. I love that fill. I think what I want to do here for the most part is just focus on the, well, same thing I always do, just focus on the primary hits. Make sure that kick is lined up. Got a couple of prominent snare hits in there. Most of this is looking pretty good. It's only off by like milliseconds. But I don't want to cut into another transient. Let's see how that sounds. I do think I want to get this snare hit here. That tom hit there is dead on, as is the next one. Let's see if we can get that little snare hit in place without it creating a glitch. Yeah, that's good. Alright, so back into the groove. And we've got a little push-pull on this again. We'll tighten that up a touch. It's interesting. That's visually off, but it sounds good. I want to move that just a little bit to make sure that that next one on the downbeat of 3 is in line, and we'll just let that other one float a little bit. Those are looking good, except for that one snare hit. Nudge this just a little bit, and that should also make that kick line up. We'll pull this one back. Looks like we got the chops coming up again here. Okay, a little bit right there. Get that snare hit in place. Excuse me, I need to get a mute button on this. Brazil, good evening, afternoon, or whatever time it is there for you. It is almost 5 p.m. for me here. I'll have to leave in about 10 minutes. Okay, that should be back on upbeat of 1, and that's got us pretty well lined back up again. I think after I finish this section, I'd like to go back to the beginning and listen to all this in context with the edit done. Drum template for Reaper. Let me save this real quick and I will show you what I do. Open up a new project tab. For my drum kit that's behind me, I've just got a track template that's saved. And it's already got my routing done. Matter of fact, I've got a... give me just a second to find it here, and my apologies for this loud keyboard. It seemed like a good idea at first. I really love the clicky keys, but it stinks when you're streaming. I did a video, when was this done? Late last year for Cameron Fleury, showing him how I did my drum template. Because I was watching a video of his, and he was showing how he set up to record in Reaper, and it just seemed a little bit inefficient, at least to me, so I did this video that I just posted in chat to show him what I feel like would be a better way to set it up. Basically what I've done here, to where with 2 clicks I can have all 19 of the tracks that make up my drum template. You notice I don't have any effects in my template. This is essentially just with, I've got all my shells, like my toms. I've got 3 toms, and I've got them in a folder, so I've got a bus essentially for my toms. I've just used a single kick mic. I've got a snare top and bottom that are in my snares folder. I have a shells folder that contains all the drum shells, so I can process my shells separate from the cymbals. I've got my room mics. I've got my panning already set up as well, so for me to record my kit, it's just a couple clicks and I'm ready to go. That may not necessarily be what you were asking when you asked about it. I think in a lot of cases when people say template, they expect to see a whole lot of effects and things in here. But going back to the premise of trying to get it right at the source, I tend to not throw plugins and stuff on there until they're needed. Excuse me. With that said, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to put like maybe an SSL channel on the drums track as a whole, just to have a little bit of compression and some saturation to help glue it all together. But I mean, what you're hearing back here with this is, I mean, I've got a gate on the toms just to kill some of the resonance before, when the toms are not being hit. I have a clipper on the kicks that's not doing much of anything. And then I've just got the SSL channel with some compression on the drums bus. Let me find my mute button real quick so I can cough. I got to start remembering to hit that mute button more often so I don't cough in your ear. I hope that answered the template question. If that was not sufficient, just let me know and I will try to do a bit better on that. I think that video that I linked will probably explain it better than I can. Mage, what is going on? You're fashionably late as usual. I'm about to be leaving soon. We've got rehearsal for the music team at church tonight, so I got to head out to go play some 7-string for church. I'm really liking doing these impromptu streams. If that's the right word, I get words backwards a lot, but this is my second unannounced random stream over the past few days, and I'm amazed every time that somebody shows up, and it's a lot of fun. I think it's helping me to get a bit more comfortable speaking in real time, and maybe I'll do more of this. Something to do. And what is that? We've got a tom that's out of place, but then we've also got a kick here that's early, so I'm willing to bet that if I make a split here and shift this tom, that kick will line up too. And it does. So let's go back to the beginning and take a listen to what we've done so far. Now, I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer on this, but would you like to have the click in this just to see how well it meshes up against it, or do you just want to hear it as is and not worry so much about the click? You notice that I have not listened to the click the entire time that we've been in here. I've just kind of been doing it based on the ruler up top and the measure guide. But his playing is so tight. I mean, this looks like a billion cuts, but one thing that you have to consider is most of these cuts would not have had to, I can't say that. Most of these cuts would have been unnecessary had I not made the first cut, because as soon as I made the first cut, it shifts everything downstream. Okay, we've got a vote for the click, so let me turn that on and make sure that I've got it playing through monitor effects. And it should be. Give me just a moment to get OBS back up here and let me make sure that this is going out. And it sounds like it is. I'll go ahead and start playing this, and just let me know if you need the click higher or lower, because I've just got no concept of what you're hearing. All right, and that is all that we've got edited so far. All that's left is another chorus, interlude, bridge, and chorus. But it is about time for me to go, so I'm going to save this. I'll play that video of Keith one more time, just so you guys and girls can see it. And about the band again, let me clear some junk off the screen here real quick. The band is called Kinda Mad. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. I don't think they've got a YouTube yet because they are very new, and this is actually the first single that they're recording. This is the kit that we tracked. And here is our drummer, Keith. Let me try that again. Sorry, I had the desktop audio muted. All right, and there will be more of that later once I get done. Once we get done tracking everything and mixing it, we'll go back through and do a complete performance video to finish that out with Keith, and we'll put that on the channel for you guys as well. Let's see. Jagger, thank you so much for... I cannot talk today. Thank you so much for the coffee. Thank you guys for hanging out today. I've got to get going. Got to be somewhere in 28 minutes. Let's do this again sometime. We'll catch you later. Is that still going? There we go.